1, 2, 3.
Yes, it's the Late Late Breakfast Show with your host, Bernie J. Mitchell.
Are you in?
Are you in?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're here somewhere in a vineyard again, and
Yeah, we are. It's true.
Yeah.
I can see it out there.
so like, what's your name
I'm Alex.
and what do you do?
What do I do? You know I hate that question.
Yeah, I know. So Mr. Hillman, I want to sort of bleed some Trello stuff out of you.
Okay.
And we were talking yesterday, and you said, I use it in like 3 different ways and stuff like that. So people are always, I'm making people come to me and ask me Trello questions. But so what do you use Trello for? How can I use it? How can I use it in my co-working space? How can I use it? So yeah, give me 3 examples to that are beyond.
Just 3. Okay. So we can talk a little bit about like one of the operational ones. And I have I have a blog post and actually a video that shows some of the things that we've done, and we've evolved it a fair bit since we first started doing this. But we have a lot of our member onboarding process goes through Trello. So what we have is when certain events happen, somebody signs up on the website saying they're interested in a membership, somebody actually joins. Even when somebody cancels, there are specific things that we want to happen each time and make sure that people go through the right steps. And we use Trello for that. So we use Zapier, Zapier.com, to connect to that event. So again, somebody fills out a form. We can then pump that information over into a Trello board, like a start column, and then create a card with that person.
What is Zapier?
So Zapier is sort of like, it turns all the apps and services that you use on the internet into like Lego building blocks, so you can sort of connect them to each other. So when an event happens or somebody fills out a form or something like that, you can make that trigger other actions or interactions. You can sort of chain them together and create really kind of complex, useful tools, connections between these services without knowing any programming code whatsoever. Sort of drag and drop and click and all of these little buttons. And it can get a little bit complicated, but it's way easier than trying to wire it together with code. So for instance, somebody fills out an I'm interested in joining Indie Hall form, and that collects a little bit of information about them. That information gets dropped onto a Trello card in the start column. And we have it automatically create some to-do lists as well on that card. So on the back of that card, there are specific things that they need to do, and there are specific things that our team members need to do. And because it's created consistently, it removes the opportunity for, I forgot that step. It still needs to be done by a human. But the way I think about whether it's things like Trello or Zapier, you have robots do robot work so that humans can do human work better. And in this case, it removes some of the human error component while still letting humans do their job really well.
And what do people fill in on the form? Is it like a WordPress thing or a Google form?
Yeah, we use Gravity Forms in WordPress, which is sort of like Google Forms, but again, embeds in a WordPress site. Mm-hmm. Super flexible. And there's an integration that lets you connect. I think we've got some folks saying goodbye. I'm gonna.
And we're back.
So we were talking about Gravity Forms, which is this super useful. It's a commercial plugin. It is, I think it's like $200 for a developer license, but you can do just a bajillion things with it. And there's a plugin for Gravity Forms to connect it directly to Zapier. And so anytime you submit a form, you can basically make the act of submitting a form do a million different things, anything you could imagine, really.
Now, how much time do you think that saves in your...
An incredible amount of time. I'd say there's 2 big benefits. One is it does save a lot of time. Humans doing work that robots can do always saves time. But like I was saying before, it also creates a degree of consistency and less things get missed. And there's sort of a meta saving in there as well as, if my team can reliably know that steps are going to be put there, they don't have to waste their precious mental energy to try and remember all of the steps. Mm-hmm. And so I think having that in place works. And we use it, so again, sort of the very beginning when somebody's just coming on board. We use it at the end as well when a member is ending their membership. These are certain steps that we need to go through and make sure things are tidied up.
And do people go and check that board, or does everyone get an alert, or how do you know something's happened?
So that's actually probably we rely on checking it. I think we could do a better job with alerts, and we've talked a bunch about, again, with Zapier, you have the ability to sort of chain events together. So what we might end up doing is putting together after a Trello card is created or an event happens, we can grab a link and then we could email that link to the team or send it to Slack or whatever it is and sort of get people back in there. I'd say one of the hardest parts about Trello for me and for a lot of people is if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And especially when you've got lots of boards, if you don't remember to look, and Trello's reminders are kind of funny and not always consistently in my face enough to get me there. So you need to create other reasons to go there, or just have a ritual, a habit, a calendar reminder, whatever it is, to go in and look. So we do end up with, with certain things where we've got a every other week reminder, like go in, check this board, do some cleanup and things like that. If it's not a board that we're actively working on every single day.
Do you have it connected to Slack?
We don't. We did, and it was creating. For us, it felt like it was creating more noise and chatter than was necessary. But maybe we just had it configured wrong. I'm not sure.
Was it a long like? Shall we disconnect this thing, or did everyone just throw up?
It was more like it was creating noise, and that noise was distracting from what we. So like when you pump notifications, I'm a big fan of pumping notifications into Slack and sort of having Slack be this dashboard of activity, but it's the same sort of thing where if you pump it into a room that you're always hanging out in, that you're actually active in, it can break up conversation, be very distracting. You put it in a room that you're not always active in, you stop paying attention to it. So I think you have to be super selective about which notifications go in and which ones don't. And at least at the time we'd configured it, it was sort of an all or nothing kind of situation with what was happening in Trello. Basically every event was showing up in Slack, and that was just more than we really needed.
And what else do you have plugged into that Trello board for onboarding people?
So
are we allowed to say onboarding?
Sure, why not? So there's that. We also have we have a couple of different things hooked up to billing failures. This is an interesting one. So we use a system called stunning.net, that notices it's hooked into our Stripe account. And so our recurring membership charges go through. If a credit card is about to expire, its expiry date is coming up, Stunning preemptively sends multiple reminders to the person, say, hey, your card's about to expire. You should update it to avoid those failed charges. Or when a card fails because it expires or something else, any of those reasons, it sends multiple reminders for them to update the card, solve the problem, things like that. So that sort of automates a bunch of communication. But what they don't have is a very good dashboard for us to see sort of where everybody's at. They have a dashboard. So I'm sure that dashboard they made makes sense for some people, doesn't quite make sense for us in our use. So we basically hacked together a dashboard of credit card failures. So when a credit card charge fails in Stripe, that triggers Zapier to create a card on Trello. And so we have a card of credit card failure issues, and we can keep track of any communications we've had with members about the issue. And people have, the reason a credit card fails could be any number of things. And for us, the number one path to resolution is to start a conversation. And so it's not like, hey, update your credit card. It's more like, hey, is everything okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Mm-hmm. And being able to assign that card to a particular team member so we know that person's the point person. So I don't email Bernie and Sam emails Bernie and you feel like you're being tag teamed by us, like we're trying to extract money from you or something like that. And all right, I know that, Sam's on the job. I don't have to tackle it.
Does all that happen in a few minutes?
I mean, yeah, it's in real time. Yeah, it's pretty great. So that's sort of on the operational side of things. The other two big ways that I use Trello are for sort of product and project planning. So sort of as a brainstorming place that where I can take a brainstorm into actual work. So I often think of Trello as if I'm looking at it as a left to right workflow, the left side is more chaotic, the right side is more refined or closer to done, in some cases done. If I'm starting a new project, the left-hand side may be just a brain dump of, of nouns, the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's, the why's, and, rough thoughts. And then the next column I'll drag things into and say, all right, well, let's flesh that out a little bit. Let's
Do you
define that a
always
little
give
bit
them
more.
the same headings, or is it whatever comes into your mind at the time?
Yeah, it's really whatever comes into my head at the time. The third context I'll talk about, we have sort of a more consistent workflow, but it's definitely, I think of things like this where it could be a project or a context where I need to get a bunch of rough ideas sort of pinned down, and Trello for me has been a really great place for that, because I don't have to, for me, a big part of it is I don't have to worry about the preciousness of letting something that I can't do now or I'm not ready to think about or work through. Like, it just stays on the left-hand side of the board. That doesn't have to stop me from advancing things that I do know, understand. A lot of times if I was to work in like a Google Doc or something like that, the workflow that I used to have, I've always felt very weird. Like, I'd refine something and then it'd end up with this like weird scratch pad down at the bottom. And I always felt like that's the stuff that got forgotten. Whereas in Trello,
I have that same feeling as well.
Yeah, versus like, that's good stuff. It's just I'm just not ready for it yet. And I see it. I can refer to it often. So we planned the People at Work Summit that way.
Yeah.
The very first People at Work Summit board, I remember we created on my phone. I love the Trello mobile app, by the way. I use it probably more for input than reading. It's the kind of thing where I'm going to pull it up real quick, jot down a note, and then stick it back in my pocket. And then when I get back to my computer, I'm looking at that board in full view. But Adam and I did some of the first planning for the People at Work Summit on my phone in a taxi cab driving from the Northern Lakes in Italy to the airport after the Co-working Europe conference in Milan. Yeah, so that was where that conference was
feel
born.
Something going on.
Yeah, that was where that conference was born. And it was, we came back and then we sat down with Sam and we had to sort of like walk through these bullet cards and be like, well, it was like 4:00 in the morning. What were we thinking? Sort of like revisit those ideas. And then as we like moved forward. It was interesting. As we were planning that conference, we almost got in the habit of trying to use Trello for everything. And there was a point where we used the Trello for actually laying out the schedule and realized that we would have been better off using like a spreadsheet or something like that, which we eventually did end up doing. But it's definitely, once you're like in a groove, you try and use Trello for everything. And I found that sometimes a troubling habit.
What else do you have plugged into things like the People at Work Summit? Do you then sort of dive into a card and connect it to Google Docs, or?
Didn't do a lot of we don't really, other than the operational stuff, we don't really do a lot of integrations with Trello. And I know that they've built out like really more robust stuff. I honestly haven't had a chance to take a look at a lot of it. We used stickers a lot for the People at Work Summit. As a way, especially when multiple people were organizing, coordinating with all of our speakers. It was a way for us to basically use stickers to denote speakers that were confirmed or still outstanding, or we were waiting on something and things like that. So as goofy as a feature as stickers seemed to be, that ended up being super, super useful.
I love the sticker goof.
Yeah, it's good. It's really fun. So the third area where I use it, and this is sort of the where, in all of those things, they're great so long as you remember to go in and actually look at Trello. And the third context, I think, is the most important for me, because it's sort of this is why I look at Trello every day multiple times. And this is sort of like how I organize my life. So I have a board called Alex's World, and it's everything. And it's sort of the meta board. A lot of stuff links off to other boards. So it's reminders of something I'm working on somewhere else in my little Trello universe. And this board is organized by things that need doing, right? This is a very action-oriented board. And similar to the last one I was talking about, things start out more vague on the left. Things don't need to be clearly defined on the left.
Have you not got 72 cards in that left side at any one time?
72 would be a light day.
Yep.
There's a lot. It's like these are things that need to get done at some point. And then as you move to the right, it's closer to now. So basically the workflow looks like this. I've got my I call it my inbox. That's where anything new that basically, and it really should be more like it's where things come out of my brain and into Trello, right? That's my inbox. And then I start organizing things that are priority. So that's the next column, is priority. And I'm grabbing, it's not the top priority or bottom priority. This is stuff that's got to get done. Stuff goes in there. Once it's in priority, then that's where I start working on the detail. And sometimes that happens in the title of the card. Sometimes that happens in the detail of the card. That's where I start fleshing out exactly what's got to happen. Like, how do I know that the thing that is the card that will be done? And then to the right of that, it's this week is the next column, then tomorrow, then today, then doing, then done. That's my workflow. So as you can imagine, as you're moving closer to today, those things are getting more crystallized, more clear. And for me, the goal is to get whatever's on a card to be specific enough that I know I can get it done in a single session. If I can't, I need to break it up into smaller pieces.
How long is a session?
That really depends. I mean, sometimes a session for me is, it's a quick hit. It's going to take me 15 minutes. Sometimes a session is a half a day. Generally, if something's going to take more than a half a day, I should break it into smaller parts.
Are you still doing that thing on Wednesday where you don't have any meetings? Or
it's the other way around. Wednesday is the day that I only have meetings.
Yeah.
And I try very hard to not have meetings on other days. Yeah, I'm not like religious about it, but especially when it's meeting requests from the outside, I default to Wednesday.
Yeah.
And it's coming up on a year since I started that, and it still works really well. Wednesdays sometimes get like really exhausting because I've got meetings from like 8:30 in the morning until 10 at night. And I was like, that's a lot of fucking people.
do you get drained?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good. I don't take meetings that I don't want to go to, so it's not like a bad drain. It's just like a, whew, that was a day. And
So where do you go to when you think, oh, what do I need to do next? Do you go to that?
Well, so my goal is to avoid never thinking, what do I need to do next? My goal is to have that decided ahead of time. So what this path lets me do is to remember that there's the things that need to happen this week. So I sort of set up my week, and often like things I'm working on this week, I'll be like, all right, well, next week I'm going to need to do this. And so the next week board is often being built. This week board is often being built the week prior. And then at the beginning of the week, I sort of sort that, tweak that, and figure that out and adjust as necessary. The for tomorrow column essentially is what I use near the end of every day to set up what I'm going to do the next day. It's the things that are either slipping to the next day or the things that I know need to get done the next day. And then my today board gets moved over from there. So by the time I get up in the morning on any given day, I have a pretty good idea. I've decided ahead of time which of the businesses I'm going to be working on, which projects I'm going to be working on. And from that, I decide from the for tomorrow board what things are priority. And I generally pick, there's one big thing. And I recently heard it described in a way that I was better than I was just even describing it for myself, which is, what's the thing that if you get done today will be a great day. Mm-hmm. Right? So the one significant task that might take 20 minutes, it might take 4 hours, who knows? Like, the scale isn't what's important. It's, if I get this done today will be a great day. And then a couple of smaller things inside of there. And basically my goal is to set myself up for a win. I'm going to choose things that are of a scale and of a proportion and of a kind of activity that I'm going to feel like that was really good work. And then I work through my today. As I grab things, I move them to doing. And then when they're finished, I put them to done. If I don't finish them, they go back into the for tomorrow.
And how long do you have a set time, like a weekly review, or a time you plan your week? Or do you just do it in the back of taxi cabs?
Yeah, honestly, a lot of it's on the go. Yeah, taxis or on the train. The week setup, we have a weekly meeting with the Indie Hall team that we call Heartbeat at 11 a.m. on Mondays, where the entire team gets together. It's sort of our quick, like, hey, how was your weekend? But more specifically than that, it's sort of the, like, what's on deck for you this week?
Checking.
Yeah, and it's somewhere between because we could look at each other's calendars, and we have each other's calendars. So it's not so much what's on the calendar, but like sort of what's coming up. And a lot of it is for air traffic control. So I know that you, Bernie, are trying to get something done this week. As a good teammate, I make it my job to make sure that you have the coverage that you need, that you're not going to be distracted, that you're actually going to hit your goal. And in return, I get that from all of my team members as well. So sort of have that network effect. And so for me, I use the Trello as my reference for that. Sorry, 1 second.
And we're back to air traffic control.
Yeah. So, the meeting is not really for setting up the week, it's for making sure that everybody is on the same page. And the reason we do it is because ultimately, like, we should be able to look at each other's Trello boards or calendars. But I think it's very easy to forget the importance of still having dialogue and talking through it, and using these tools as a way to promote and encourage productive conversation and checking in with each other, instead of just assuming that because I can see your calendar, I can see your Trello board, that I know what you're working on. I think it's super important we're using tools like this for actually working with other people.
What did I want to ask you about the People at Work Summit, because is that coming again?
Yeah, we're gonna definitely do that again. That will happen again next spring, for sure. And between now and then, although we're admittedly pretty focused on our move, we want to create some smaller events to sort of help keep that community glued together. Online again. Yeah, absolutely.
So just to have a shameless plug for what the People at Work Summit is.
Sure. So the People at Work Summit was the goal of the People at Work Summit was to create an environment for conversations about the human side of work and collaboration, and how people really work together. There's all kinds of events for sort of people that run co-working spaces and the operational side of things, and that's well and fine. The last 36 hours that we've spent together, I think in this retreat was also really, really valuable. But the thing that I think gets talked about the least, but needs to be talked about not just more, but I would say the most, is members and how members their point of view on this sort of thing. So a couple of the defining goals, apart from the fact that the People at Work Summit was an entirely online event, so the barrier to entry and attendance was much, much lower, less overhead to run the event, so it was less expensive, no outside sponsors, so nobody's pitching you, and you didn't have to travel, so no travel costs whatsoever. You can attend from your computer screen wherever you are, but still have that sort of communal experience, which I'm very proud of how well that went. I feel very, very good about it. And there's lots of things that we wanted to do that we didn't do. There's lots of things that we did that we know we can do better. So the fact that people enjoyed that experience, people were admittedly and reasonably skeptical that an online conference could have enough of a community vibe to feel like it was worth it and not just be a collection of webinars. We promised that, and from what we've been told, we think we delivered.
The Slack room was really cool.
The use of Slack in conjunction with live streaming, things like we use Crowdcast, it worked really, really well, and we learned a lot too. So the next one will be bigger, it'll be better. And we'll get more people from all over the world. People were joining in, both speakers and attendees from every time zone, which was really, really cool. But the biggest goal was really to get speakers that a lot of people have never heard of, on stage virtually. And a lot of that included members, community members' voices. So over half of our speakers were not people who run co-working spaces, but members of those communities talking about that experience.
I particularly enjoyed listening to, people like me, other people, rather than, I've got a book, a record, a product coming. It was nice to hear.
Yeah, there's really real genuine insights, yours included. The feedback that we got, all of the favorite talks were from members and members bringing unique perspectives and stories and experiences. And I say unique, and actually the reality is the uniqueness is not the goal here. It's actually the resonance. It's the fact that people were able to talk about something and other people go, yeah, I experienced that too, even though I'm on the other side of the planet. So that unifying experience was really, really pretty amazing. So very pleased with how that event went. We still have some sharing of what we learned. Right before I left, Adam and Sam recorded a podcast episode for the Co-working Weekly show about what they experienced and what they learned from their point of view, because it was the first time either of them have really produced an event like that as well. So that should be coming out on the Co-working Weekly show podcast if in the next week or so.
Ace.
Yeah.
So anything to wrap up with? You need to get off your chest?
No, man. This has been a pleasure to hang out with this crew here in the UK and get to hang out with some old friends and make some new ones, and more like this, please. More like this.
So doing anything in November?
I'll be at the Co-working Europe conference in November, as always. What usually happens, and happened once again, is Jean-Yves put me on the schedule and then asked me if I was going to be there. He's good like that.
He is good.
He's good like that. But I'm excited. That's that's an event I look forward to every year. And the first Co-working Europe was in Brussels, and that's the only Co-working Europe that I missed. So I'm glad they're going back to Brussels, so I can say that I've been to every city that the Co-working Europe conference has been to.
I think he told me on site that that's actually the only reason he's doing it.
For me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to send him a thank you note.
We'll see you there. High
Awesome,
five.
brother.
Please go to berniejmitchell.com/podcast. Bernie would love your feedback and input.